The following program is rated TV MAL. It contains strong language and is intended only for mature audiences.
What is happening, everybody? Good evening. It is time for the Vice President debate. Hey, I'm the Appalachian American. Let me turn it down. It's a little loud. Let me turn it. I'm sorry. I'm frazzled. Hey, it's me, the Appalachian American. Joining me as always, my left-hand man, the author, probably the man who can actually do a full sentence. I'm Joe Biden. Man, here's David.
G'day, friends and fans. In the man corner, we have JD Vance for Rags to Riches. In the left corner, we have Tampon Tim.
You should have done that mirrored because you're pointing at each man.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just realized that I actually should have done it the opposite way. That's JD Vance on my view, but it's but I'm guessing on the broadcast it's on that side.
Yeah, no, you were right the first time.
I was right the first time. Oh,
yeah. Anyways, last but not least, for now, Tommy and the Guinea Pig Collective.
I'm just here to watch things go haywire and people start running around amok. I may or may not have planted a few Joker gas bombs in this one, so this should be a delight. How you doing, gentlemen?
We are good. I could not complete a sentence. I'm Joe Bidening out here, and yeah.
You are unburdened by what has been.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I am unburdened. Actually, I am burdened because I'm tired of the rain.
Yeah, he's not unburdened yet. He's a little water soaked.
Yeah, I'm waterlogged.
But at least you're not a tampon.
What is up, X? There's 11 people watching over on X. I'm sure there's going to be more as the night goes on.
Yeah.
How are you all, fine folks out yonder? Live now.
I would show you link, but it's not showing me as live on X, and I can't.
It is. You got to go down because there's so many people that are live right now covering this debate.
Yeah, but it doesn't give me a box to expand.
Okay, well that's weird.
Yeah.
I
must be still on the old X. A lot of people have got the new X.
Mine is the upper right hand corner. You just do the little share, and then you make a post about it from up here.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the men's room so I can, because normally it'll have it. Yeah, here we go. Got the men's room up. Here we go. Got it.
President debate. Hashtag 2024. I'm sharing all the links for tonight.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I was just complaining that I couldn't see a link, but now I can. But I shared your other one as well. Because, hey, why not? Views of... All right. How's things going, Tommy?
Well as can be. I'm not in any states that were affected by the recent hurricane, so I mean, there's that.
Yeah,
Man, I'll tell you one thing, dude. It was rough.
I mean,
We gotta-
I'm lucky. I'm in a part of Florida that rarely ever gets hit. So,
Well, that's nice. In the
yeah.
Florida.
Those poor people that got hit up in Tennessee and freaking North Carolina. What an absolute disaster that is. And the response that you're getting from these so-called concerned politicians is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
President Trump, however, started a GoFundMe with $1 million. So,
well, he's also working with Elon Musk, from what I understand, to get those people Starlink.
Yeah,
So
they brought in 30 units.
Yeah.
And other organizations are bringing in generators. So what you have, folks, is not even FEMA responding to Americans in need. What their job? That's their job, and they're not.
Yeah, dude. See, that's one thing I don't like. I just don't get it. I don't know why in the world Biden is on the microphone talking about they're not going to get any more. It's like, oh, okay, thanks for being unpresidential, you douche.
Meanwhile, they just signed bills and they just sent, what was that, another $8 billion over to Ukraine?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? Really?
Oh,
like
yeah.
we you know, and this has been the arguing point with a lot of people. If we can't even take care of our own, especially in states of emergency like this, why are we handing money to people overseas? What are they going to do for us? Are you actually telling them, are you making them sign IOUs at an interest rate? I mean, what's going on? No, we're just handing them money left and right. And then we're supposed to bear the burden of natural disasters that happen, or you got to have somebody that starts a GoFundMe, or you got somebody that's got to start their own private thing to actually raise enough money to take care of these people in the disaster zones that should have been taken care of by FEMA and these other freaking government entities.
And then you have Harry Sisson, or Harry Sissy, shilling to the Democrats, saying that he chooses intelligence, compassion. And it's like, what? Where's the compassion for the Appalachians, Harry Sissy? Where's the compassion for the guys down in Florida who were dragged out of their cars and beaten by migrants, and then the migrants drove off with their cars? Where's the compassion for those guys?
Oh, Harry Sissy.
Old Harry Sissy is right. But then again, when you're like Cranston, who's basically, how much has he paid? $100,000 a month, apparently, to tweet? Give me that job, right?
Right.
How much is Harry Sisson? Harry Sisson's only on 10 grand, apparently. I don't know, Social Blade, whether or not they're how accurate they are, how much these influencers get. But we know the Crasteens are paid way more because they're trust fund babies.
Yeah.
They don't have to work a day in their life because daddy nepotism and big government taxes don't apply to them because daddy just has to create a trust fund, and all your high income tax. Notice when they talk about high taxes and high corporate taxes, it doesn't affect trust funds, folks. All these trust fund babies, they don't. That's why they vote Democrat. It's a shakedown. The Democrat Party says, you vote for us, millionaires and billionaires, and you support the party, we'll give you a little bit of tax. We'll give you big tax write-offs, but we'll tell the public that was the Democrat. That was the damn Republicans who did it,
That's the way they always do it, too. And I mentioned earlier, I said 10 years from now, when they finally get a new white knight for the Democrat Party to run, and it's somebody that may or may not be actually good, I still have a feeling that all the ones that are entrenched in there, like freaking wood ticks, are going to still be blaming it on Trump 10 years later.
Well, in 10 years, I doubt we'll have Hillary. I doubt we'll have Biden. We'll definitely still have Kamala. I doubt we'll have Warren. I doubt we'll have Bernie. We'll have that guy from Ohio, the billionaire from Ohio, and Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin Newsom be into his second attempt to be. But remember, Bob Iger wanted to run for president.
Oh, what a disaster that would be.
Yeah, he still does. He wants to retire soon to start his campaign. Apparently, he wants to push. Apparently, this is Only speculation that he wants to push Governor Newsom into the top spot. You know, he wanted Newsom to be running for president so he could run for California, which will give him a springboard to run for president. But apparently Newsom's denied a spot to Iger on his team, and that's why Iger is wondering what to do with himself now. But remember, Bob Iger's got a job not because he's a good CEO, he's a good bootlicker, right?
Licking boots.
And that's the Democrat Party. You get your nose brown, you get your ankles wet.
You lick some boots.
Yep. And see, a lot of people don't understand what's going on with a lot of these companies. Why they're closing, why are they self-destructing? It's because they're looting the investment funds, okay? That's why these big movies, Hollywood productions, 200 million, 300 million, video games, hundreds of millions of dollars each for a freaking video game that maybe sell $1 million. It sells $1 million, so $1 million and seven, so it might make 7 million or 70 million. You don't know, but you don't spend $100 million to make 70. No, it's all about looting the investor, and because investors don't have rights.
Yeah, I mean, well,
that's what Disney's doing. That's what Lucasfilm is doing. That's what Ubisoft is doing. It's what Sony America is doing. They're looting the investor, and in some cases, trying to loot their parent companies along the way.
A lot of these companies have also done a lot of stuff to themselves, especially when it comes to, you know, the price gouging. And it's not like legit price gouging like the weirdos are making you out to believe. It has to do with the amount of stuff that's being stolen out of stores. So
yeah,
the gouging is actually coming. Yeah, it's actually coming from all these looters and everything like that. So they're stealing shit out of the stores. So they're taking a loss. So what do they have to do to correct the loss that they've had? Well, they have to raise prices. Then when you got Democrats telling, well, you need to raise wages. Now, well, how do you think that's going to work? Do you think they just magically give all their employees more money? No, they have to compensate somewhere. So then they raise prices again.
The problem is, and I've spoken to a lot of Democrats, they think a billionaire is making $1 billion. And they think billionaires don't pay tax. They think, oh, billionaires only pay less tax than my secretary, says Warren Buffett. But Warren Buffett, he's talking about his personal income tax. Yeah, he doesn't. See, Warren Buffett doesn't draw a wage. You know that, right?
No.
You didn't know he never drew a wage? He put, how he built his company is he never took a wage. He just kept reinvesting. But also there's a couple of allegations along the way that when Warren Buffett started as a stockbroker, he was cooking the books and writing and shifting losses to his clients while he was taking all the wins for himself. That's the allegation. And I mean, I never believe anybody who can get 100% at stocks. I mean, come on.
These people, they know what's going on. They're planning ahead. You know, they've got people watching this kind of stuff. Like some of these politicians that are doing that shit. You know, as far as I'm concerned, politicians as a career shouldn't exist. They shouldn't. Public servants. Pay them a public servant wage, and you're going to get rid of all the corruption.
Yeah, if you put them all on minimum wage, no. See, the problem is they say, and I heard this. I heard this from Keir Starmer. He says, but somebody in my position at a private company would make $10 million. And my response, and I got kicked off the chat for this, is I said, yeah, but those companies make a profit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tier, you can have 10 million. I wouldn't mind if a politician made $10 billion, but the company has to be debt free and the country has to be debt free and making money to justify, and it can't be more than 1%, right? If say your revenue is 2.3 trillion, that's fine. 1% of that is a huge number, But if the country is $3 trillion in debt, no, bro, you got the debt as well as you got the debt. You got the liability as well. That should also apply to CEOs.
That falls into responsibility for what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they should absolutely be bearing the brunt for this. And the first thing that should go is their salaries. Sorry, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And the thing is, as much as I don't like Xi Jinping, that's the first thing he did was actually cut the wages of the bureaucracy.
Well, but like every type of or governmental institute that's out there, every last one of them has some good points to them. Not all of them are 100% bad across the board, regardless of how evil the people are that are running it. Every last one of them has something good in them. That doesn't mean that the entirety.
I'm not saying good. I'm saying right. No. I get what you're saying. I'm not arguing it. I'm just saying like every last one of them does have something that is good in it. It's just overall their policies aren't. Yeah, it's like, remember, Kamala may be incompetent in public, but she has a very competent staff. Although the majority of her staff are only competent in PR, but she has some of the most competent staff of any Democrat right now.
Dang, dude, Jimmy Carter's 100 years old today.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about that the other day, and it scares me how far people have fallen, right? The Jimmy Carter by today's standard, Jimmy Carter did nothing wrong by today's standard. But back then, he made a mistake standing up. He failed to stand up to Iran, and yet successive governments have failed to stand up to Iran. Oh, but we can't punch down. Yeah, but when a toddler's kicking you in the shins, you don't stand there and take it.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Carter, however,
she passed away last year. His wife, Rosaline, she passed away November 19th, 2023, 96 years old. That sucks.
And just think about it, right? Jimmy Carter cut the budget of the CIA. He was the last Democrat to do that. And look at by today's standard, they want to increase the national security state.
Oh, yeah.
Such good.
And they want to fund
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter was the last anti-war Democrat. I mean, to hold office. There've still been a few anti-war Democrats.
Who's do you guys know who's hosting the debate tonight? It's CBS. Never mind, I just seen it. Sorry.
That's all right. I drew a blank.
Well, actually, the correct answer would be BlackRock.
Yeah.
Hey, the of course they've got their chats turned off. So that's lovely.
Does it come as a surprise?
No. All right, I've got it muted. I'm just going to leave it like this while we finish talking. Expanded tax credit. Supported different options for families. Supported paid family leave. Okay, cool. I'm really looking forward to this because do you guys remember when JD Vance ran across the tarmac to go talk to Kamala Harris because they saw her jet?
Yep.
And he ran across the runway and stuff. I was like, okay, I like this dude. For some odd reason, they were on the same tarmac, and when he realized, oh shoot, hey, that's Kamala Harris's plane. He's like, he just took off running. I was like, bet, dude, that's awesome.
I think it's funny too. Like every time one of these politicians come up with some kind of policy and everything, the other side decides to counter it with almost the exact same policy. Like this shit is ridiculous.
Yeah, but right now,
it's so stupid.
Policies, the problem is right now, most of your policies, and this has been all the way back. I mean, Obamacare wasn't Obama's policy. That was Romney's policy originally. And Romney, like a spineless jellyfish, wouldn't stand up for himself. I mean, Romney would have won the election if he turned around and says, my policies are so great, Democrats are adopting them. And he could have recovered from the binders of women saying, what I meant was binders of women of candidates. What were you thinking I was talking about? Put it back on them. What do you mean something? What's wrong with having a binder full of people to interview? Shouldn't we know what their qualifications are? He could have gone and attacked on every level, any argument against them. Instead, he just waved and walked away. I mean, it's almost as if Romney handed the election to the Democrats. Oh, wait, he did. So did McCain. I mean, when McCain spent...
Yeah.
I mean, McCain... it came out later that McCain spent half his time drinking with Hillary Clinton. I mean, how did he win the nomination? Because nobody knew. Nobody would speak up and say, this guy sucks Hillary Clinton's nipples. I mean, how desperate to... I mean, why would you do that? I mean, obviously, Hillary had dirt on him.
I'm sure that woman has dirt on half of the Democratic Party in general.
Yeah, but I reckon there are a lot of... I've come across this problem myself. Yeah, like when the Liberal Party of Australia was really, really, really super popular, like 70% of the population were voting Liberal, right? Some of the best candidates couldn't... you'd have like 8 or 10 candidates for one, and they'd all be like pretty much all out of the same school. So, there was no opposition. So eventually what happened, all the candidates who couldn't get selected would start running for the opposition parties simply because, they just wanted to be in government, They didn't actually care about the policy of... That's how the Uni Party became, and you're getting that to some extent with people who should be in the Republican Party running as Democrats because it's a blue state. And you get the same in some parts of America anyway. But eventually you start getting blue spots, the unions. They, since Clinton, have been strong-arming people, their membership to vote blue no matter who. That's a religious mantra right there that has a lot of people brainwashed, Oh,
and that kind of shit drives me absolutely batty too, because they sit there and they will call everybody on the conservative side, and I don't care if they're like the original true liberals who were supposed to be, libertarians who were supposed to be for their country and everything, not what's become the now liberal party. But, they would label all those people as cultists while they're sitting there saying, I don't care who it is. It's Democrat right down the board who they tell me to pick. That's not cultist behavior. Like, wow. Well, I mean, how many gallons of Kool-Aid did you drink before you said that one?
First time you're in a cult, the first thing they do is tell everybody else is lying, and only we and only us have the truth. But you can break a Democrat's narrative. You believe in equal outcome? Okay. J.K. Rowling sold 1 million books. I've only sold 100 books. Are you going to make up the difference for me? Or is she going to make up the difference for me? Who's going to make up that difference? Because the outcomes aren't equal. You don't believe in equal outcome. And they say, oh, yes, we do. Really? The next time you go to a Taylor Swift concert and you see a long line at Taylor Swift and the other guy has only got 2, are you going to go into that line to make it equal? Because equality of outcome is not the government, is like a slogan. It contains no substance. And the more you break it down, now, yes, I absolutely firmly believe there is a vast difference between the left and the right. The right is about individuality. The left is about collectivism and meddling. Okay? Those are the two defining features of the Democrat Party. To meddle in other people's affairs, to control what you do with your money. I'm not talking about accountability for crimes. I'm talking about, oh, I don't like you reading Tom Sawyer. I'm going to take Tom Sawyer off the shelf and make you read this book by a black woman too, because blacks are historically oppressed. But then you ask them, who by? Oh, white people. Really? So for 6,000 years, white people oppressed Africa? You've got to be joking. This is the problem. 6,000 years of history keeps boiling down to whatever narrative that the power brokers want. And the only reason why they have power is the masses out there being childless sheep. And that is voting with your emotions and not your head. And it does go sometimes for Republicans, like in Arizona. Oh, we must keep those Democrats out. Yet you keep voting for a Democrat in McCain.
Oh, the one that's even better than that is the people that are sitting there and Democrats run, states, counties, even countries, and they go to another one and then they bring their policies with them and then they vote the same there. Like did you not learn your lesson? And when you were talking about equity, that has got to be the biggest fallacy that Democrats have ever pushed. Because if you look at what equity really is, and these dumb idiots that are sitting there saying, oh, this is great, they do not realize what equity actually entails. So you're talking about you're going to take from somebody else to balance out everybody. So in the end, nobody gains nothing, really. You all get put on an equal lower playing field. You all wind up in, and maybe the people are in the poorest versions of that. They might wind up with slightly more, but they are never going to wind up in a really good place. Like they think I'm low income. With equity, I'll be middle income. No, you won't. You'll just be on the high end of low income. And then the middle people will be lowered into the freaking the high end of low income. And then you're all going to basically just barely be scraping by. Now you screwed everybody down. Now there's no way to advance because everything has to be equal across the board. Congratulations.
That's it. They did they looked at it in California. I mean, where the socialist mayor is cheering the closure of a school, saying, "Oh, it's going to bring equity to the neighborhood." What? Closing a school? Yeah, closing a school for gifted kids. And calling it equity. So you've just robbed the country of an education. Oh, I thought education was an investment in human capital. Apparently not, because if you get ahead, that's inequitable.
It's crazy. It's just amazing that more people just don't see through this bullshit. And I personally like to say that those type of people that are sitting there yipping and agreeing to this, like off Sesame Street, the little alien guys, yip. The ones that are agreeing to this, they've been Alex DeLarge, like hardcore, Clockwork Orange, man. They have absolutely no clue what's going on. They've been fed the propaganda to the point that it's almost like a fad at this point, because so much of it has been pushed on them that, well, this is the popular thing. I have to go along with it because all my friends are.
And I was there at university arguing with these people back in the 90s, and their final argument is we have to break a few eggs to make the world a better place. You should do the Christian thing and give up your wealth so that the poor are no longer poor. And it's like, you don't understand poverty, you don't understand wealth, you don't understand how that we cannot. What they're trying to do, my friends, is they're trying to make sure we never achieve a higher civilization. Because when we achieve higher civilization, we are free of them. They want to halt progress. Because as we progress, they've found out, oh shit, they can't control social media. Oh shit, people can write and publish their own books. Oh shit, people can create their own YouTube channels. No, bro, we've got to bring this back to the 1950s we're not going forward, comrades. We're progressing down a slippery slope, on which they keep telling you it's progress as they're walking backwards. You watch. There'll be social media. Kamala will let slip that she's going to talk about a social program. Government social programs. That's what's going to be the talking points.
Breaking now, reports of several X outages and loading malfunctions emerging just before VP debate. Huh.
Yeah.
Where have we heard this one before?
Yeah.
How do you suppress the truth? Make sure nobody sees it.
Yep.
And then condition people to only believe that if you didn't see it on CBS, it didn't happen, And my God, that was effective.
Cat Turd commented or posted and said, Tim Walz is going to come out of the closet tonight because he's obviously gay.
Wait a minute. He didn't come out yet? I thought all that kicking was a sure sign of it. And that little fairy princess wave that he does.
Did you see him? He was booed. He was pointing people and waving weirdly, and people didn't recognize him. And then he said, "Don't you know who I am?" And people started booing. Like, how dare you?
How dare you? Here, how dare you? I'm Vince McMahon. God bless America. Bless America. Yeah.
God dang it.
Brock Lesnar. Get Kamala Harris. I hear the crap on my chest.
Hold on. Has
That's
he taken
crap.
stage? Have they started?
I don't see anything.
No, there was a cut to the studio where they. So
Holy gray
just
hair
asking are they getting
Tuesday.
ready or?
Holy gray hair Tuesday, Batman. Look at the one on the right. I mean, on the right. She looks. What hair color is that? You are showing your age, madam.
Yeah. Actually, did you see Rule on the other day? I mean, without a makeup on, she looks a freaking 80 years old. And she's talking about how great Kamala is. And what a wonderful conversation we had. Yeah, because it definitely wasn't an interview.
I don't know. I was watching an old.
I
was watching an old Silverchair video, and it just made me think of all these weirdos that are, they're either politicians or they're figures like this in media and stuff like that. And it's called Freak. And she's getting like a transfusion of the sweat from the band playing, and it's de-aging her. And it just reminded me of all these damn people. Like, I think in the end, she wound up looking like almost like a lizard. Like a lizard alien or hybrid or something. I said, is that what they're going for?
I've long criticized Republicans and conservatives in general for basically they tend to only they don't tend to retire. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was Reagan's mistake in California. And not only do they fail to retire, they fail to
100 Israelis and
train replacements.
Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
No one cares.
The expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. We saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is
fundamental.
Is my man wearing a pink tie?
Weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old
Hey, what's up,
Donald Trump talking about
like purple, but
yeah.
But it's not just
it's fuchsia. The dogs. They're eating
Trump that understand how
it's a shade of purple, not pink.
John Kelly said that he was the most flawed human being.
Hey, we do have a telephone number
And
if you guys want to
both
call
of
in,
his
540-632-1315.
his national
Call in.
security
You guys can
advisors
talk to us, ask
said
us
he should be
questions, and we do
nowhere
reserve the
near
right to
White
bounce
House.
you if you say
Now,
something
the person
stupid.
closest to them,
Here we go. My opposition is incompetent and bad and
highest
terrible.
office. That was
Oh.
Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness.
Bullshit. We've seen a steady decline in leadership. Yeah, a steady decline.
Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards
Russia.
See that type of fickleness around
What's your
holding
tip
the
for
world
that, Tampon
together,
Tim?
we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today,
Committed to what?
we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
You're not spreading
Governor, your
democracy
time is
in
up.
Ukraine.
Senator
There is no
Vance, the same
democracy in
question.
Ukraine.
Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just
Look how furious Timmy is.
agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor.
God damn, that was beautifully answered. I wish Trump had the forethought to answer like he just did.
You're a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in the inability to advance. Donald Trump
That's a lie.
And put nothing else.
Because it was a failure.
Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon.
Trump, for the love of God, pay attention to how Vance does this. Believe me,
and when Iran shot down American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles,
yeah, but what diplomacy have you achieved? Nothing. You had you broke your word to Russia in '91, and in '96,
understand,
and in 2014.
We will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April.
What's steady leadership?
Repel. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Steady. Countries around the world are dumping the dollar.
Program, and President Trump did exit that deal.
It's steady, though.
He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn
Thank
now
you.
to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say
Our
climate
very
change
own
makes
Brian
these
Leap
hurricanes
still doesn't have
larger,
power.
stronger, and more deadly.
I've heard from a few people that are in those areas that they said those numbers are actually more likely in the thousands.
7 in 10
I bet.
Americans and more than
But can I
60%
point out the
of
fact
Republicans under
that
the age
there
of
have been worse
45
hurricanes
favor the U.S. taking steps to try and
pre-1930 that
reduce
killed
climate change.
tens of
Senator,
thousands.
what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually.
I've been
footage
ripping
of
apart
two
people
great
all
parents
night
on a roof with a
where I
6-year-old
nearly had
child,
an
and it was the last
aneurysm.
photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those
I
innocent
hope
people.
Leap's
Our
okay,
prayers go
though.
out to them.
I'm worried
And we
about
want
him.
as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible. And then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true. We're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore
My
as
hatred
much
for Al Gore
manufacturing as possible, and
is
you'd want to produce as
astronomical.
much energy as possible in the United
Apologies,
States of America
Appalachian.
because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there.
She's acting like hurricanes started since the dawn of petrol engines.
We work together on these emergency management. Governors, no partisanship. They work together to all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there that we recover. But we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now.
Where did Obama buy? Beachfront.
We've seen massive investments.
What did Oprah buy? Low-lying island land.
The Inflation Reduction Act has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we
but
have.
How many have you have lost their jobs, Tiny Tim?
The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America is in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate
change. The largest in the world.
They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice.
What climate?
You can do that.
Which
at
climate
the
do
same
you
time
want?
You're creating jobs that we're
The
seeing
Ice
all
Age?
across the country. That's
The Middle
exactly
East
what
warm period? The Middle East.
we are seeing us
These
becoming
people
an energy
are
superpower
treating
for the
climate like a
future, not
religion.
just the current. And that's what absolutely makes
Don't
sense.
let this
And
distract you from the
start thinking
fact that
how do we
where
mitigate
he's
these
standing right
disasters.
now
Thank you.
is where
Senator, I want
Kamala
to
was
give you an
originally going to
opportunity to
be.
respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not.
I am so distracted by Vance's eyelashes. I can't even.
Massive flooding. They understand that.
Vance, we like you, but for Pete's sake,
trim the brush, trim them, please.
And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota,
you're really thinking ahead. Then why are the richest people in the world flying around in private jets?
He's not wrong, though. Kamala Harris is thinking ahead, just not the type of head that he's thinking about.
Well,
it might be the same head he's thinking about.
Money for my campaign.
It might be the same head.
We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly
Can be
what
smarter than be smarter. Don't tell the people you're going to be smarter. Tell us.
The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret,
thank you.
Really?
We're going to turn now to immigration.
What?
The crisis
Always
at
with
the
the
US-Mexico border
consensus.
ranks
No,
as one of the
science is not a democracy. Science is there's a fact and an opinion. And the opinionated
pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil?
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for
Yeah,
less
look
than
at
minimum
Timmy. He's
wage in our country.
frustrated.
And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers
he is.
who just
Look
want
at
to
his
earn
mouth.
a fair wage for doing a good day's work.
Biting in
The
lips.
final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
What's up, YouTube? I see 4 people watching over there.
You care to respond to any of the
138 are watching
specific
on X.
allegations, including that
Hey,
the vice
X.
president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules,
Look at
among
me, it's here.
other things.
Yeah,
regarding
He's doing
children.
something.
the drug mule is not true, but I will say about this.
Oh,
fentanyl,
okay.
'cause this is a crisis.
Okay, there's no drugs flowing into the
last 12
country,
months
yeah,
saw the largest
and-
decrease in opioid deaths.
and they know,
But there's still
no,
more work to do.
they
But let's
know
go
that you
back
won't
to this
search
one.
12-year-olds,
Kamala
so
Harris
they
was the Attorney General
give the
of
drugs to
largest
kids.
border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look,
I
don't
could-
want
What's
to
her
solve
name?
it. Most
Who's
I
your
could
prosecutor?
easily
that
take-
is the United States Congress. That's the Border
I could
Patrol
easily
That's the
take you
Chamber of
guys to the
Commerce.
border
That's
right
the
now. If I really wanted to, I would take you to the border right now
Office
and show how
bill
bad it
on
is.
immigration that this
There's
nation
no
sees.
question
I'll
It
bet.
was drafted by conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Langford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs.
Keep in
DOJ
mind,
money.
Tim Walz is a carbon copy of Biden, only more coherent.
But as soon as that was getting ready to pass
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
actually
but
tackle
it's
this,
always the
Donald
same
Trump
song
said
and
no,
dance.
told them to vote against it because it gives them a campaign issue. It gives them to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we
That's
have the
rich
options
coming
to do
from
this.
somebody that
Donald
does a
Trump
lot
had
of
4
executive.
years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you,
executive
America,
orders.
how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for
And
it.
who stood in the way?
Wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9
So
years
did-
after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said,
I saw that side glance, Vance. I saw that
"That's the
side
bill.
glance.
That's the bill. She'll sign it."
Dehumanizing people who break the law,
Senator,
have no respect for
question
you,
was,
and commit
will you
massive
separate
amount of
parents from
crime.
their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo
Great wording on that one.
Exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News
He beat
polling?
you to the punch, lady.
of
Hey, you
Americans
see how mad Walsh is getting? His eyes keep getting beadier and beadier.
We fix this issue with a
No, he's
bill.
I can't tell.
Temple.
I can't tell if he's having he's going to have a stroke or an aneurysm.
And we saw this.
I'm taking
I'm
aneurysm.
It surprises
Yeah,
me.
but I'm not a
amazing.
doctor.
Talking about and saying I will create stories to bring attention to this. That
What do you think,
vilified
Tommy?
A large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield.
Either one would work for me.
Republican governor.
I think he's gonna have an aneurysm. His face keeps getting redder and redder.
There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together.
Consequences. Really?
And solve this if we didn't let
You
Donald.
keep talking
Trump
about
make
coming
the
together.
issue. And the consequences.
What?
of Springfield were
Calling people
governor
Nazis?
had to
That's
send
coming together?
state law
Calling
enforcement
people,
to escort kindergarten.
telling people the only policy to vote for are your policies, even though you took them off other people?
And not working together to find a
And
solution.
all you've done is make promises for 3.5 years.
Point like this, we dehumanize.
The only thing I'm waiting for is for Tim Walz to get so upset
See,
he breaks
again,
into a can and starts kicking.
Ask you the question.
What do
first.
you think you do to
The
Republicans
governor
every
has
day
made
on
the
Twitter?
point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding.
Lady, change
So
your
you have
hair
said
color. It's
repeatedly that
mildly
Trump will,
disturbing.
through executive action, solve this.
Well,
do you disagree?
they're liberal, so what do you
that
expect?
Congress controls the
They're
purse
not
strings that
disturbed.
would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement. You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross
If I ever have a
majority of what we
girlfriend and
do
her
as
hair
a
color
vote is
looks
just
like that, I
empowering
would
law
throw her
enforcement
an
to
ass
do
in
the
the
job.
chair and
I've been
do
doing
it
this
myself.
more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents.
You're like
they don't
89
want to
that
do their job.
sounds.
Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico. You've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill.
Well, at least they agree on something.
Yeah, but you don't back law enforcement. You don't deport. You don't deport.
Continuing to bring this up.
And then you created this anchor baiting
blaming
nonsense.
migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill
There it is. It's
gives
exactly
money
what you
necessary
do.
to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in
But
90
it's
days.
you who created the multiple steps and
When you
multiple
start to
appeals
adhere to
for
what we
people
know,
to
American
constantly
principles.
abuse
Talk about
and run up the legal bills.
Matthew,
It's a big kiss to lawyers by the left.
The least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity.
No,
about
most
how we
keep
treat
telling you
other
to
people.
cut immigration.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected
Well,
status.
Margaret,
Nora?
but
Thank you.
no,
Senator, we have so much
first,
to get to.
Margaret,
Thank
I
you.
think it's important
We're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys weren't
economy,
going to
we're-
fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP-1.
That's right. Lay it on the table.
Or apply for parole and be granted.
This is what Trump should have done right here.
A Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person.
Did you see the fireball eyes from Wall Street?
I love it.
Legal immigration, Margaret. By
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen. We
CBP
want to have.
Act has not been on the books.
That was so.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
You guys
Thank
are
you, Margaret.
losers.
The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns.
That was
has an
expertly
economic
done.
plan. So let's talk about this.
Wow, they cut off Tim because he put his foot in his
Vice
mouth.
President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax
What?
credits.
We missed him doing the can? Son of a bitch.
The Wharton School says your proposals will increase
Trump, this is how you do it. We love you.
Look at him. Look at
Please
him.
take
Up,
take
up,
notes
up,
on
up,
this.
up.
Thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from.
No, you don't.
Shrunk it by 3.5 million.
Tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is
it's a free market, Tim, but you constrict it artificially.
My sister and her boyfriend barely got their own house. Barely.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And then making
by that
sure
close, like they were that close.
Look at the approval process that people have to go through.
$5 insulin is a good thing.
Oh, he showed me the paperwork, and
but who put insulin up in the first place?
As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis. Prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts.
Abolition. If you saw those papers that I saw, your blood would be boiling too.
We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing.
Well, is this Fruit Loop really claiming a big win on a 4% reduction after it went up by almost 50%? Like, really?
Exactly. That's what they did with the food. They put it up, the eggs up to 7 and then down to 4, even though before everything it was $1.98.
The same thing with gasoline. Same exact thing. It went up by an astronomical number. They brought it down a little bit, and they sat there and claimed this is a big win, and these prices are the new normal, because that is the Democrat mantra. Everything is the new normal.
Yes.
Get used to it.
They up the prices and then lock in inflation with high wages, and then say everything's the new normal, and then you wonder why all the manufacturing goes to China.
We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that,
what's your fair share, Timmy? What is your fair share? Because I'm telling you, you don't have anything but glib, blah, laissez-faire
and says
slogans.
Increase the nation's deficit by 5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher
more than
by
that.
about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policy
Get him. That's how you do.
Generation in this
you know what a
country,
PhD is? I'm a good parrot, university doctorate. That's
so
it.
When people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say, look at the record. He delivered.
Somewhere
American workers.
in a prestige college,
they want to undo the Trump
professor
tax cuts.
that
But if
he
you
was
look
just
at what was so
describing
different about Donald Trump's tax cuts,
literally just had a stroke of rage.
is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done?
Well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession.
He didn't shut down.
More people have died under Joe Biden
since the Great Depression. 9
More
million
people died.
jobs.
That's right.
That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things.
Notice they stopped reporting the deaths when Joe Biden came in.
I made a note of this.
How many lockdowns, Timmy?
Can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't.
Lockdowns aren't science. National security, your national security apparatus are proven liars.
Tip of the day is this: if you need heart surgery, Listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald
Well,
Trump.
not only that, but their so-called expert that they were relying on, Fauci, originally said that this was not going to require lockdowns. At no point are we going to need lockdowns. Also said that we're not going to need no vaccinations. Then all of a sudden, we're going to need lockdowns. We're going to need vaccinations. There's not going to be any boosters, though. Then all of a sudden, oh, we need to go through a whole bunch of boosters too. So the same people he's saying that we need to listen to are the same ones that flip-flopped on their own policies. So fuck him.
And refused to address sudden death syndrome in the large number of people 18 to 35 who got more than 3 boosters.
Stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy.
Billionaires! We got talking about demonization. Hey, billionaires. How many of them?
We need to have
what billionaires like Taylor Swift to endorse you, Timmy, or billionaires governor?
What concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the
billionaire
guy
governors
who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my community.
I hope Vance asked him about. I hope Vance asked him about did they ever remove the tariffs that Donald Trump had put in place against China, because they never did. I hope he counters them with it.
Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
Wrong. Net jobs, 148,000, Timmy. Well, what are you talking about, 250,000?
Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you've simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But
you
right
don't
now,
make healthcare affordable by taking more money off other people. You just keep driving up prices.
Last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17. Worked on
I was born in a middle-class, very rural family. We didn't ask you about that, Timmy. We asked you about Hong Kong.
To travel to China 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China.
Oh, vote buying.
Where that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community
Vote
knows
buying.
who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits.
The word salad stuff is what drives me crazy. Like dancing around the question. Answer the question.
All he had to do was, he's
to make sure
wasting
that
time.
For real. Say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up.
You are talking a lot.
But being
Worse
there,
than me.
the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques
No,
of
you
this.
didn't.
I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can.
China started a trade war, and you're losing.
Folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be
Timu,
I was good at, or whether it was being a good
head of
teacher, or was being a
Tencent,
good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care
and
about.
Alibaba.
Governor, just
Oh,
to
look what you
follow up
got.
on that,
Amazon.
question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
I'm surprised she re-asked it.
On this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Nope.
Thank you, Governor.
Has he done the can yet?
In 2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit.
Tampon
for the
Tim is
nation's
trending
highest
number
office,
6
and you said
on
he
X.
could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked
Whoa.
many times. You've said you regret those comments and explained.
Well,
you
he did make
voted
them,
for
so he's
Donald
got
Trump
to
in 2020.
explain
The
himself.
Washington Post reported new messages.
Tim
last
was
week
there
from
definitely because I
also
seen in
disparaged
one of the
Trump's
videos you could
economic
see
record while
tampons
he
being
was
thrown at the
president.
tank treads.
Writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he's going to do it. Tariffs that protected American manufacturing.
Yes,
and it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration. It's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned,
That's not
you
reproductive
signed
rights.
a
That's the
bill
obsession with
that
killing
made
babies.
Minnesota one of the least
And I'm getting a
restrictive
coffee.
states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is
because you have no
the
balls.
states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know
there's always an option.
And I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes
David's
is
muted.
to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you.
We just jumped to 430.
Diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia,
470,
state.
480,
because of that, she had to
490,
travel a long distance
500,
to North Carolina to try and get her care.
What is up,
Amber
X?
Thurman died in that
we jumping now.
Back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights As basic as the right to control your own body is determined on geography.
Wait a minute. Didn't they have a completely different stance when it came to COVID shots? Oh, your rights of your body didn't matter then, though, did it?
That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out.
Yeah, and it makes you want to smash my head into a chalkboard in Minecraft.
Does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio
Margaret
voted
Nora,
overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom. Your own choice. Are to not do that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. As far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state.
This dolt is making it sound like pregnancy now is like Middle Ages type of care.
Available, and we make that true. We also we're a top 3 state.
That's why they never solve any problems, so they can keep repeating the same mantra every election. We're not pro-abortion, really.
That's not the case at all.
What was Ralph Northam running then about TV comfort until we decide its fate?
To make options for children more affordable.
Oh, whose national convention had abortion trucks outside their place?
On the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman,
who actually had a senator come out and say, "We got to stop pretending we're not pro-abortion."
Still be alive. There are a lot of people.
Whose party was that?
That she was, and maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me. But as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physician.
It's not health for the baby, though.
Trying to distort the way a law is written.
What about the father?
That's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me. What was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given.
But how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things that.
How? Answer the question.
It's been misread and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this.
You're the one who's getting involved.
When Roe versus Wade was in place.
You're the ones passing laws and throwing around free money to subsidize baby killers.
Increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals. They get early childhood education.
That's
healthcare.
called responsibility. You want to take all the responsibility off the parent to give it to the state, so you have more power over the child.
Using all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
It's always the argument, oh, you're anti-abortion, but when the baby's born, you won't take care of it. That's because it's not my child. It's not my responsibility. We can't take care of everybody's child. We can't take care of all the world. That's literally turning the taxpayer into a slave for people who are legally into America, for people who have children who can't afford it. You're just talking about slavery, Tim. You're just calling it care.
Yeah. Hey, so did anybody notice when they were standing together? Let's see if I can find it. Come on, work.
Gosh, I hate how it has to reload.
Yeah. I saw they were standing together. Hold on.
Yeah, he fact-checked it with President Trump.
He fact-checked it with President Trump.
We have to move on, and we're going to be...
All right, come on. Let me see. Where are you? Right here.
He said something.
Is JD Vance standing on something?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're both standing on something. I think there's a slight raise in the stage. I don't think it's even.
Because JD Vance is 5'7" and Tim Walz is 6'2".
Yeah, I think the stage is uneven, but also look at how different size the podiums are. Vance is a little wider, and I think, and also
could it be the perspective?
Yeah, I think the stage is bent. Look how close they are to the background. Yeah,
I think they've
tried to even them up. Yeah, but
that's
the stage
really weird.
is like slightly curved.
Right, but it doesn't do anything about the height of the person.
No, because the stage is like this, and they're standing on one or two spots. So I think Tim's standing closer, and that's why you look at him. He's taller, whereas JD is definitely standing on the rise. So yeah, you're right. He's standing on something.
Oh, cancel. I was trying to look at a different layout. I'd like to have a layout where, like, in the bottom corner is like what we're watching. Just so that way, like, while it's on commercial, I can put it down there. I need to do that sometime off air. I need to remember that. David, remind me. My human notepad. David's literally like my human notepad. Anytime I have a thought or an idea, I'll send it in a message. Not necessarily for him to do anything about, but just so that it's wrote down somewhere that you can be like, hey, did you take care of that? And then I can say, oh, you know what? I did, or I didn't. Because like Alex Jones once said,
I know how you do it.
It's called
custom studio. You got to do a custom studio, but I've never done one before.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. So,
but I want to try.
Written it down. I've written it down, and as I do with all notes, I'm sending them to you.
Sweet.
So it's there. And so later I could say, did you get my note? Because it will otherwise go away.
Yeah, I got it. I'm not going to read it yet because that way it'll keep it as a notification.
It should, yes.
But
that's what I do.
All right, well,
I make a note, send it to him, and so he can keep a notification up to say he's got a reminder.
Oh, look. So the stage is curved.
Yep.
And they are standing flat.
But he's on but Tim, the taller one is on the lower end. See how it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Gun legislation that Democrats claim will
Uh-oh.
curb gun violence. You
Here comes
oppose
some
red
guns.
flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years.
I like my
in
MP5, thank you.
holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings.
And of course,
No,
the
it
Tommy
won't.
gun. Because I want you Democrats to respect my gangster.
Authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no.
I'm
And the
terrible.
details really matter. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do
It's
have
an
to do
epidemic
better.
of violence.
Governor Walton
Guns
actually
don't
probably
cause
agreed
violence,
we need to
people
be better
do.
than this. The question is just how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90%, and some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have
Tim
to
looks like
increase
he's about to have a mental
in our
breakdown.
schools. We have to make the
Yeah.
doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands
We're
of
at
bad
800
guys,
people
it
on
just
X.
doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan
What is up?
solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and
Yeah, but taking guns off legal gun owners doesn't stop crime.
Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office.
How many gun laws have you passed and have seen only an increase in crime, Tony?
Well, they're 7
Temp on Tim.
And they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter.
Yeah.
I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the
The
Second
vice
Amendment
president's
is there,
a
but
hunter?
Our first responsibility is to our kids.
Oh.
Did you just say that she was a hunter?
Enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we
Oh my
really wanna
God.
solve this, we've got folks
Appalachian
that
had the
won't allow
craziest
research
idea.
to be even done on gun violence.
You know, I get
I have
so
people-
tired of hearing this shit about,
Live with me,
that
I
we
do
need
not-
to have
here's what I
checks and
do.
we need to have
This is a
balances.
good
Let me tell you something. So one of the states that they sit there and say it's so easy, just get a gun. You just walk into the store and you can walk right out of it is over here in Florida. Guess what? That couldn't be any further from the truth. You go in to get a gun, and I know this because my wife used to work for Florida Highway Patrol. She no longer works there anymore as a dispatcher, but she had purchased a firearm anyway. When she purchased that firearm, she couldn't just walk in, pick the gun, and then walk out of it with it. They had to do the background check. They had to okay it, and then 3 days later, she was finally allowed to come back and pick it up. So there are already checks and balances in place for somebody who was legally buying a firearm. These fools, like this idiot Tim Waltz, think that you just walk in and walk right out like you're buying toothpaste. It's
And
not the way it
again,
is.
He's not addressing the mental health issues that are creating the violence, and that is the over emotional, visceral hatred that is generated in the bully system that is state public schools, where anybody who is different or speaks out against the teacher is isolated and allowed to be vilified.
It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because
They
I do think it
create
illustrates some of the
Finland!
weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland is, okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need
created by the bully system in schools.
It's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest
the Democrat-run
put them away and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA.
Oh, you're friends with school shooters?
For a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where
there's a clip. I become friends with school shooters.
And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so
and instead of addressing the root problems, you're amplifying them, Tiny Tim.
And all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing
What's up, Ernie?
Just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just
guns have no capability to encourage you to do anything.
Conversation. I think there's a capacity to
guns don't decide. People do.
Protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
And here's the thing: notice how they focus on the guns. Do you know there were more stabbings in London than there were shootings in New York?
Rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing.
And that's caused by NIMBYs shutting down development because of the environment.
$55,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax.
That's subsidizing $55,000. That's going to create. That's so houses are $55,000 overpriced. That's price gouging.
Just drive up prices
Yeah.
higher.
No, it's not handing out. We have first. Let me say this: this issue of housing. And I think those of you listening on this,
but you have limited land.
We've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around.
That's a free market, Tim.
Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things
what about the people affected by the hurricanes? They're never going to get their house back.
A way of approaching this is something
right.
we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell
but
all
the
of you
ultimate problem is you have limited land. You either build up or out, and you're running out of out.
Veterans home loan.
You're running out of land you can build on.
You don't have to pay the down
You're
payment.
destroying farms to build houses in Minnesota already.
You're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run.
Another thing that he's talking about right here, this comes right out of somebody else's playbook, and I'm sure a lot of people had already forgotten about it. You know, short-term memory people. So the same thing that he's preaching right now comes right out of Obama's playbook. Let's give people all kinds of money to get a house that really can't afford to get a house. And how did that wind up for the housing market?
We get it back.
They want to put. They want to always buy votes. That's what it comes down to. The biggest price gouger in America is the government.
Things in the long run end up saving our money, and that's the thing that I think we should be able to find.
If companies are making between
you can't blame
10 or 16 and 25% profit,
happening in many cities.
The government takes 36% of that. That is
naturally affording
of their
affordable housing.
Total.
You can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create
government dependency. See, it's always about control. Always about you come to big government, big mama, big papa, big brother government controlling. You want a house, you come to us.
Immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to
Yes, it
build?
does.
the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country.
Wait, just bring that right back.
Look at him, whiplash.
25 million aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers.
He saw Jesus and almost wept.
Why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked
81 million votes.
Change the equation for American citizens. If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says,
that's the only thing I disagree with him on.
One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief.
It's trying to make fuel unaffordable and reduce everything to 15-minute cities.
Senator Vance,
you want a house, you have to come to the government, and then you have to obey our rules.
Governor, we will get to you in a moment, but Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing.
Hey, Appalachian American, you could use one of those federal lands.
We have a lot of land.
That'd be nice.
We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's again, blaming.
That's a lie. Yeah, record
question. Are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands.
He said there's a lot of land that's not a national park. Tampon.
They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money.
That's exactly what they are, Tim.
For that, I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments that gets people in. And I'm still.
You call them investments. Investments return. You are buying votes.
Saying that it is immigrants.
You're not seeing an increase in revenue. You're not seeing an increase in housing.
But Senator, on that,
you're just rearranging deck chairs.
There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers.
He is just kicking dirt in her face, and I'm loving it.
Harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to do things. And wants to throw
Waltz can't do nothing about it. He can't.
They have to do.
So
and what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Waltz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the
those are not what he's talking about, Tim, and you know it, you tampon.
Governor, thank you, gentlemen. We have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate,
that
President Trump
commodity.
was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, I have concepts of a plan. Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. I think it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs.
Yeah, healthcare is the biggest price gouge right
the
now.
Reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA.
I bet you would.
It was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality.
No.
And so what I know is under Kamala Harris,
yeah, but it's state funded.
Those of you listening,
it's subsidized.
Now,
it's
Donald
not real.
Wants to go back and
it's a
remember,
fake accolade.
He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal.
So
the
what
ACA.
if you can replace it with better tampon?
And he would have repealed the ACA had it
he
not
wants
been
to put tampons in the boys' bathroom
to save that bill. Now, fast forward. What that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home,
that's
and you
not true.
If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26.
Again, he's playing what-ifism. He's making assumptions based on politics, not on what's actually happened.
But look, this issue.
Just making glib political statements.
I've got a concept of a plan. It cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept. Because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay.
He never said that, Tim.
Those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Not true.
Thank you.
No.
Senator,
What that ACA will do is a lot worse. You need to get hit by a tractor, a literal tractor, just to get covered.
Just look at healthcare in Canada as an example of what happens when the government runs healthcare. You run into the ground, run out of money, and start dripping it out with eyedropper, and then rounding up the oldest people and killing them, and saying it was a suicide.
Under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works.
Oh,
and the question about
he fumbled that.
And Republicans fought tooth and nail, saying, well, Americans should be free to do this.
They
well,
want better. What's wrong with wanting better, Timmy? You keep saying how you want better.
I'm sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone. That's the only way insurance works.
Oh, believe me, me and Appalachian would love better health care.
Look,
Yeah.
know that they need
Mine
to be on
sucks.
healthcare.
And mine
People
boss
expect it to be there.
using the
And when
worst.
we are able to make it, and we are making it.
Can't wait
this
to go to
way,
my
when
new
we
company.
Incentivize people to be
Okay.
in the market.
I'll
When we
have
help
better
people
insurance.
who might not be able to afford it get there.
Well, I
and
mean,
we
what he's talking about, what him and Kamala have been talking about, is that basically they want a Medicare for all.
buy into Medicare.
And let me tell you, as somebody that's actually on Medicare, because I'm on disability, I can tell you firsthand that Medicare does not work. As a matter of fact, I'm going through something right now where I had to go to the hospital a month ago because I had this like infection on my chest, and I had to go to the hospital to get treated. I'm under the thing right now where I'm having a hard time getting Medicare to pay for it. Because at one time I had another coverage, so Medicare was considered secondary. So I have to go through all this hoopla with them just to try to get them to pay for it. And Medicare there's this weird like idea that Medicare is free. Medicare is not free. Before I get my disability money, they take money out every month for Medicare. So I pay for Medicare every month. I forget how much it is, around $200 some odd a month or something like that. So it's not like it's free. And even then, they don't want to cover everything, and you get put in these loopholes, what they call a donut hole, and then you have to pay a certain amount for the year before they'll cover anymore.
Kamala Harris.
And here's the problem: what they won't address the $400,000 that they pay some of these consultants to sit there and decide who lives and dies.
Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay a certain amount of time. What we know is
why
it's the child off to a better start. The family works better.
No, you're just buying votes.
So
we had society perfectly functioning until politicians came along and said, we need democracy. Oh, and by the way, you're going to vote for everything, and therefore we're going to buy the votes. And
those
for the last 250 years, that's what politicians have done. Buy votes.
Cancer, or your child gets sick. We know what happens.
Again, playing what ifs.
That means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest.
No, that's the economy for the last 250 years, Tim.
Tax breaks.
We can't afford everything.
He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best.
Busting unions?
Works for all
Ask the rail
so
workers about union busters.
And I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them.
Teddy Roosevelt is spinning in his grave.
The supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important.
No, you restrict teaching of doctors. You restrict teaching of lawyers to keep them in the upper middle class, so they will keep voting blue no matter who.
Dakota, and I'm still telling you this. We were
And they do the
listed as
same with government
federally
workers,
priced
and they do
funders.
the same
Our
with
federal
teachers.
program of paid family and medical leave and help with
They're
this.
buying votes with taxpayer money.
And
That's
make it easier to have
all
the children that you
Timmy's
want.
talking about.
Governor, your time is up.
Could
Senator,
you
do you
imagine
support
if
a national
Vance and
leave
Harris
program?
went
And if
were
so,
debating?
for
He would
how long?
destroy her
Imagine a real
so
free market.
badly.
Could
their
you
employees
imagine,
help
right?
them
You don't want to
their
go back to 1950s, really, when people
Well, first
would
of all,
pay
Margaret, a number of my
$5 for
Republican
a doctor
colleagues and some Democrats too have worked on this issue. And
out
I
of
think there is
pocket?
a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very
Doctors are,
personally because I'm
and
married
one
to
of the
a
reasons
beautiful
why
woman
doctors
who's an incredible
need
mother
high
to
pay
two
is
kids,
high
but
cost of
also a
insurance
very, very
because of the
brilliant
massive,
litigator.
ridiculous
And I'm so proud
payouts
of
you
her.
give people.
Being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company, but the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for
Not to
people
have
to choose
children,
the family
yes.
model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald
Well,
Trump
at
and
least
Kamala
Tim's
Harris.
honest there. He actually likes that idea.
Federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare.
Seth and I were talking about this age ago when during the debate when they were talking about education and how home care doesn't, how homeschooling doesn't get federal
Young
funds.
families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this.
But subsidizing it has not brought down the cost. It's
not just childcare is talked about as being expensive. It's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families, cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the childcare shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide childcare options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest
Right,
issue.
Brian,
Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were
You
shocked
got
to
some
hear
crazy
it's not
ass.
that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on on options. We've done scholarships types
I
of
grew
things.
up with childcare. It used to be called grandparents, Tim. But you and people like you back in the 50s and 60s said, nah, let's throw our grandparents into old folks' home.
Not only do they not get the
Let's
money,
ignore the old people.
$4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not here. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know
I doubt it.
especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move
But
on.
you won't invest, but then you'll abort kids. And that's the result why you have a worker shortage. 40 years of abortions.
After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation,
They didn't say there was no fraud, lady.
certified the
just said
2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress.
Here we go.
January
Did
6th.
you ask Al Gore this in
You
2001
said you would
or
not
Hillary in
certify the
2016?
last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called
That's it, right.
unconstitutional and illegal. Would
Wrong.
you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it.
Good.
What President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm
Wow,
sympathetic
okay,
to
I
the
guess I'm
speaking on
leaving.
things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there.
What about Chicago? What about Minnesota?
In St. Paul, and said,
Detroit.
we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police.
Oh, your son's Fifi's got hurt.
Hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over.
He made the decision you wanted, Tim. There's a difference between right and wrong and the decisions that you want.
Democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's
says Al Gore. Since when have the Democrats? How often have you had an obstruction in the Senate under Donald Trump, or an obstruction in Congress under Donald Trump, or constant harassment? Tim,
people hear that. So I think
you're
this issue
talk
of
about
settling our differences at the
lying.
ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what
Hillary
happened
Clinton
on January 6th, the first time in American history,
not true,
that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are,
not
4
true.
years later,
Never
in
happened.
the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Says Al Gore and Hillary Clinton,
Do you want to respond to that?
who also contested elections.
First of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not
2,000 mules.
And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point, but the issue was
I do. Democrats,
your side.
No place.
Also lying all the time.
Repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something. That's not censorship.
True.
Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not.
No, it wasn't. It was a peaceful process.
Because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that.
Hillary Clinton. Go and ask Hillary. Go ask Hillary.
Future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present.
They keep saying hate speech. There's no such thing.
Reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
That's not true.
In the crowded theater, you guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see
your side asked Facebook to do that.
I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is where is the
nor should he ever.
Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office?
Keep playing what ifs.
It doesn't. And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that. because of course that's what we would do.
They
So
should
America,
pick
I
you
think
because
you've
they're
got a
losing
really clear choice on
because
this
they're losing
election
the white
of
middle
who's
class
gonna honor
vote.
that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
And the younger black vote too. They're losing
We will
that.
be right back
Well,
with both our
that's-
candidates. The CBS News.
Or what's the
That's
older
why they
black vote?
arrested Diddy. That's why they arrested Diddy. I'm the prosecutor. Because a lot of young black people
guess-
don't like what Diddy did.
No.
No, a lot of
I
young
guess we're
black
going
people
late.
do not like what Diddy did. That's why they locked him up. Because they weren't going to lock him up. They delayed that case for 6 months, trying to find a way to let him off the hook. But Deshauna? She pressed charges. And they took it out of the state and made it federal. So they can lock him up and spend another 6 months effing around.
Yeah.
So they can run out the statute of limitations on Diddy's
Oh
assault
my
charges.
god, the age on that woman. She got hit with the age stick. Gee Louise.
Yeah, she got hit with the liberal truck.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you spend a lifetime
going down the Destroy America highway at 195 miles an hour.
We were never meant to spend the majority of our life working, and yet that's what they do because of greedy, selfish vote buyers like Tampon Tim, who instead of building communities wants
Believe
to build.
me, if the economy was way better, if the economy was way better, me and Appalachian could retire right now if we really wanted to.
The majority of people should be. All right.
Believe me, I would love to retire at 32. I would love to retire at 32.
Yeah, but fundamental model should be you should at least work 3/4 of your life to save up for the rest of it, right? But they have people working till 70 and dying at 75. That's not, that's just a load of bollocks. And putting old people in old folks' homes the moment you retire, that's just taking away human resources that could have been used. But you shrunk the family home, didn't you, Timmy? You won't talk about that. You know,
there's been a lot of zingers tonight, and Appalachian is like writing them down for videos to like edit and make into shorts. I could see the wheels turning.
Yeah, we're gonna be. I'm definitely gonna be editing some stuff together. Not like editing like out of context. I'm gonna be putting clipping stuff and putting it out because.
Just remember, we are not sponsored disclaimer on it, so you can't be taken down by YouTube.
Well, that is part of that clip from now on. Like that little segment was its own section. Yeah. And so when I pull that and I put that on somewhere, that'll pop in.
Yep. So they can't take you down for soliciting for a political party.
Yeah.
Because nope, we weren't paid. This is my opinion. And that's it. And you have a right to your opinion. But Timmy, you don't have the right to be believed. That's the mistake you keep making. You keep thinking when you have an opinion, because you're a Democrat, it has to be believed. That's the vote blue no matter who attitude.
Yep.
Did it come as a shock that they started beating the January 6th story drum again?
Of course not. Because
of course not.
No, because they're losing. And they're losing bad in the middle. I mean, Gen Z, it turns out Gen Z the hardest to get out and vote. I thought the millennials were, but after about a decade, the millennials eventually caved in because they realized, hey, we're a voting bloc now. But even the millennials are breaking up, They always do. Once they start seeing how much they pay in taxes and regulations, they stop being glib and they actually start paying attention.
I was recently
the first time
walking.
they go to a doctor.
I was recently talking to one. So he's a little bit of a younger guy. He's making good money. I think he said he was making somewhere around what was it like I think he said it was like over $35 an hour or something like that. It's decent wages, right? Cannot afford a place of his own, and it's killing him. And he's talking about it. He's like, I can't afford it. He said, I got an, he's basically saying he's got an RV outside his parents' home, and that's where he lives, in an RV outside on his parents' property, because he can't afford to get his own place. And a lot of these younger generations are starting to find out that now, and like the shit that their parents have, it's not afforded to them because it's unattainable with the increase of everything. Talking about home costs, talking about how much costs for gas and food and everything like that. That realization is finally coming home, and now they're realizing that these policies that they've been thinking were the right ones back are not helping them at all.
What they did, they made you sell your home to retire, right? And that just kept upping the price of homes.
With Donald Trump's agenda, he will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't
afraid you're going to be held accountable for your crimes.
Here's fear itself.
Timmy.
Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics
of
joy.
She's not.
Did he just say wake? Did he just say wakeboard? Oh my goodness! Wow.
Make your voices heard.
Way
Let's
forward,
look
man.
for a new day.
Oh, I thought he said wakeboard.
That opportunity, and everybody gets a
new way
chance.
forward, man.
I humbly ask for your vote.
No, what's really important is she said that Kamala Harris is bringing the policy of joy. Anybody's been paying attention, you can look up that whole
strength through joy.
Strength through joy. It's a freaking Nazi propaganda tool.
And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say, I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
Wow, that was lovely.
Remember when they used to complain about the cost of university? Now they're talking about how teachers are underpaid. I mean, which is it?
Here comes the hand. Here comes Waltz's hand. Oh my God, is that his wife? Holy crap, Waltz! Holy
he married
crap.
a Hillary clone.
That is,
yeah, dude, she is.
Actually, take Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and boom, there you go, right there, clear as day. Whoa, who's the babe? Who's the
That's
babe?
JD Vance's wife.
Shows the difference between conservative women
hot
and
woman for president. Hot woman for
hot woman
president.
for
Yes,
president.
please.
Yeah.
JD Vance has my vote. I want the vote for the hot American woman.
Oh yeah,
Vance. Yeah, my vote. The hot American. That's what we need. We need hot American women. I'm so
I think
tired.
that she's actually I think she's Indian. Like from
So
India. Oh, I'm not discrediting that. I'm just saying I'm not
Kamala,
sure.
who's
I think
Jamaican.
that she's I'm pretty sure that she's an American citizen, but I'm not sure. I think her parents are like first generation immigrants. I think. See, I'm definitely
I'm terrible.
I definitely am not saying I'm not discrediting that. I'm just saying I think that's what that is. But anybody have any final thoughts? I'm kind of ready to jump into bed, dude. To be honest with you, I'm pretty tired.
I
Well,
say.
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Tommy. Go ahead, Tommy. Go ahead.
All right. I was going to say, I think Vance did a very good job. He was very well rounded in most of his responses. And every time he was asked a question, even if he led in with something else, he came and circled. I hate using that one, but he circled right back. He circled right back. He circled right back to the original question. And I think he did an excellent job. And I think if anybody that he's working with, especially Trump, wants to pay attention to how you conduct yourself during it, performance in a debate like this, he should definitely look at everything that Vance did. He was very on point with all his responses. And when he came back with the rebuttals that he needed to, that a lot of people said, why is Trump not mentioning this? Why is he not talking about this? Vance was right there and came right back with some of the things that he should have to absolutely counter what Tim Walz was saying, along with the moderators that were on that team when they were trying to cut him off. I think it was excellently done. I really wasn't sure about this guy, but after seeing his performance tonight, I'm pretty convinced this guy knows what he's doing. I was impressed with his overall performance, quite honestly.
I like the fact that it is definitely a more balanced. I mean, definitely, Pence, he brought nothing to the table and he pretty much disappeared for 4 years and then decided to stab Trump in the back because he wanted to run for president himself. That's why Pence was let go, because he is a backstabbing politician
who got caught in broad daylight.
Yeah, got caught deer in the headlights. But I mean, again, it circles back to we have a opportunity to have a more moderate government, and that's what JD
Yo, he looked ready. He looked ready.
Whereas with Tim, we have an emotional teabag. I said tea.
Folks that are
look at his face. Clip this face, guys.
Yeah, venture capitalism that made America.
He looks like a 4-year-old caught in a lie.
4-year-old caught in a lie.
So my opinion.
We're gonna come back to it. The face. Crazy. Looks like a.
That's funny.
Crazy-eyed Tim. Tampon Tim is crazy-eyed.
Charlie Kirk says JD's doing so well against these three women.
Yep.
Caption. There you go.
That's the perfect side eye right there. How many?
I'm saving this photo.
How many times have you made that face against Kamala? How many times? I would say 15 at least.
I love the Trump
like
face. You're gonna also get the Trump face.
I'm definitely saving that.
Yeah, Trump face.
Vance is trending #1.
So my opinion is Vance is eloquent. He spoke so clearly, and he didn't fully go after Waltz like I expected, but hey, at least the joke writes itself. But his verbal beatdown of Kamala was so it was cloud 9 satisfaction. Like
He kept the attacks towards Kamala. You could tell he really wanted to debate her so badly. You could see it. And he got in every punch he could. And he actually did something that I wish Trump did this. He went to the moderators. It's like, no, you are not going to break the rules. How dare you lie to the American people? And then they cut his mic. If Trump did that to the ABC hosts, they would not be they wouldn't be as smug as they are. The ladies tonight, they're bland, bland as toast, burnt toast,
milk toast,
and
yeah. The usual shows in the media.
However, I did see some like level-headed like agreements here and there.
Yeah, Tim is less radical than Kamala,
which kind of surprised me about Waltz. He threw a few surprises at me because he sounded way more like. Here's the thing. He sounded a bit more competent than Kamala. Way more competent, and you actually understand him a lot better. Yeah, he's a walking tampon craze-faced idiot.
But
at the same time, some of the stuff that he was saying on paper, it sounds nice, but like JD Vance
about half his stuff
what Vance said it further stretches that. It's like, well, that's a great idea, but you could amplify that a bit and make it even more grander. JD Vance gets it. He gets it. Yeah. And Vance, I'm actually okay with the dude. I like him better than Pence. I wish JD Vance didn't suffer from TDS in 2016. We could have had him. He would have been a remarkable ally. He would have been a remarkable ally then. But now's the time.
Yeah.
Now's the time. He's younger than Pence. He's younger than Pence, more level-headed than Pence, and actually has a far more understanding of how America really is. And
okay, I don't want to keep Seth too long. He's starting to fall asleep on us.
Yeah.
I finished.
I was getting ready to ask if anybody has any final thoughts or anything that they really want to get out, or can they wait? Do we want to wait until Friday? Because I know I do want to discuss, like, break down certain things. I'm going to be going back through this and re-listening.
I'll hold everything.
Okay, I'll share this tweet to the chat then on Twitter rather than bring it up now.
What is it? Just read it.
I could. Waltz had recovered from his opening answer, but he never reached Vance's level. I don't think this was much of a debate. It won't move the needle, but Vance was clearly the superior debater. But however, you got to acknowledge that Waltz was better than Kamala.
That is exactly. He's a master debater.
Yes, and a tampon.
Abolition. I'll save everything else for Friday.
Write stuff down. Write stuff down if you need to, and make sure you take any notes that you want to remember. Just to make sure to have them down, because I'm sure we'll dive into this. Like I said, I'm going to watch this one more time, by myself, just kind of where I can like pay attention to it and listen. I want to write down some of the lies that I found, and we'll go over through and be able to knock stuff out. So, Tommy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite. Glad I was able to stop in and have a little fun with you gentlemen. Laugh at freaking walls, and it's really a shame that we didn't get the can kick up. I was so looking forward to it.
That would have been pretty good.
It was a weird stage setup, though, wasn't it?
I thought so.
I didn't pick that up at first. I didn't realize how much taller they were. Difference.
Yeah. But anyway, we will be live Friday night discussing all the furthermore details of things to come out, the aftermath of the debate and all that good stuff. And hopefully Lape will have internet by then. He's on day 5 of no internet and no power.
Well, he said he was going out to pick up a Starlink, but
he did get a generator.
Yeah.
So,
but he has to drive somewhere else now to get a Starlink, and that may take time.
Yeah. So, all right, you guys take care. Have a great night, and we'll see you Friday night. Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Good day, sir.
Later, dudes.
Good night, Jim Bob.
Hell, I got to go.
Peace out.
Burn in hell, New World Order. Fuck you. Fuck you, New World Order. Fuck you, Bill Gates.
I love you. You gotta do better than that. I love you.